Hey guys, welcome back to the 429 podcast. I'm 2,
9.
Four.
and this is Techcast episode 20. Yes, I know we're a little late on this episode. Actually, it's
Quite
been yeah, quite late. It's just been a very hectic last few weeks. As you guys know, it's the holiday season, and it's been a bunch of just crazy things that have been going on lately. So we've been just trying to keep up with pace and everything, but we still have amazing tech news stories for you now, and we can't wait to just have you guys all hear it.
Yes,
And
sir.
so, without further ado, we'll just start kicking it off, right?
Yep, let's go
Let's
for
start off. Let's start off with one big news story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Usually we save those for the end. We're gonna kick it off today with a big bang, right? Google's down, like
it. Again.
badly down. So Google actually had an outage across all of its spaces. Usually they have it across, just one particular space. But this time, every single Google product, right, was down. From Gmail to Google Drive to Workspace to Google Classroom to Gmail to Google Search if you were logged in, as well as YouTube and all their other proprietary technologies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Hell, even Android was reporting issues, right? So basically what caused the outage, they actually did a thorough investigation, after a few days, and they actually came back and found out that their authentication system actually just completely went down, right?
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
So, in the data center, what happened was there was a throttling limit set in place, and because that people were passing the throttling limit for that particular authentication system, it caused the whole system to kind of just go down. And so now they put engineering checks in place and a bunch of other checks in place in some data centers. But this even shows you that even Google's not free from the whole hardware issue we face in tech, right? So it's crazy to see this actually happen. But what are your
Yeah, it
guys'
is.
thoughts?
I mean, it's just crazy to think about how one service can pretty much take down so many people with it. We're so interconnected with one
Mhm.
particular provider that if that provider ever goes down, you're pretty much just stuck from, outside of them just trying to fix it as fast as possible.
Dude, like,
It's
think about how many companies utilize like their OAuth features for like login and whatnot. Like hundreds and probably thousands of places are using them specifically for login. So like, there's lasting effects even outside of Google's own ecosystem, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's really crazy how like everything's just pretty much like just all connected to Google and all rely on them. Like if something just goes down, like if they just go down, like so many companies just go out and they can't. I remember we keep thinking about this, like how not even Google, but other companies, as well, like Amazon, like the AWS and stuff like that. They go down. These companies are getting backlash for being
Mm-hmm.
down, and they literally can't do anything. They literally just have to wait until Google resolves this issue.
Yeah, it's
So
pretty nutty.
it's pretty crazy. It comes down to like, we have to sometimes reflect on, is it a good idea that we're relying on like these three key players for everything? Is that really the structure we really want? Ideally, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a wild one, right? Like
Super wild.
it brings up that whole infrastructure issue, but I see the perspective of relying on these companies for their services, right? Not every company can afford to have their own, servers and have that all up and running, right?
No, for sure.
So, it's definitely a double-edged sword here, right? You're kind of over relying on, these services and less relying on your own services. But at the same time, right, it provides more protections in place, I would say, from these guys are the experts at it, I would say.
Mhm.
It's a really interesting discussion, and I think maybe we turn it into actually a full-fledged episode next year at some point, right?
For sure.
But for now, we'll just keep going with some other TechCast stories, right?
100%.
Big one coming up, right? Tesla, HP, and now Oracle is moving to Austin, Texas, right?
Yep.
And this
Yeah.
joins the like of Apple and Google, who are already there in Austin, Texas, as well as the newest Austin, Texas resident, Elon Musk, right? So it's a very interesting move that's going on. And I think we're seeing, as much as people say that, oh, these tech companies would never leave California, it's like the tech capital of the world. I think it's shown pretty clearly right here that, these guys care about their bottom dollar, their businesses, right? Capitalism is still in full force and in effect, right? If you raise
Mhm.
taxes too much, like what California was proposing, with the 1% increase on taxes for every company that makes above like $100 million or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
these companies are not afraid to just get up and dip, right? And you just saw it now with HP. You saw it with Tesla. Now you see it with Oracle, right? And you even see it with Elon Musk, who just was like, I'm out, right? So yes, it's easier for them because they're richer, and it's easier for them to handle all this. And I guess the main question that comes out of this is what's going to happen to their employees. Believe it or not much, right? If their employees still want to work in California, they can. They want to work in Texas, they can. They want to work anywhere else in the world, they can, right?
Yeah.
I think what we've seen, which is one interesting benefit of this whole COVID economy, is that
Work from home.
you can work literally wherever the hell you want to work from.
At least
right?
engineers can.
At least engineers can,
Yeah.
right? And it's interesting to point that out because majority of these companies that are moving are heavily software engineering, right? Or heavy accounting or heavy financing, which is also very office-like functions that are remote, right?
Yeah.
So it's an interesting advantage that you have with the whole remote work economy and how these companies are now taking advantage of lax tax laws in Texas, right, to take advantage of that. So it'll be interesting to see the long-term effects of this, but we already know that Google and Apple have already been in Austin, Texas for years, right? Now Oracle, HP, and Tesla are joining down there too. So Austin's actually becoming very, very it's a city to watch, I would say, as the most up-and-coming city in the United States, right? In terms of tech.
Oh, for sure.
But what are your guys' thoughts?
I think, like you said, like pretty much these corporations will go where the money flows, right? And if they have to go to Texas or New York or even one of the new up and coming ones like Atlanta or whatever, they're gonna go to it. They're gonna make deals. It really comes down to where the money flows, where they can get their best bang for their buck, right? And you can't even argue with them. And these engineers and stuff that are employed by them, they're still gonna have their opportunities. Some may actually want to move to Texas. Because Texas is an up and coming tech city, so they want to be part of it. There's more opportunities there too. So it really much, you can't really see any faults for them trying to go there. I know people are gonna be like, oh, they're trying to circumvent certain state laws. Yeah, but I mean, they have the option. I mean, that's an option of them, and not to mention that these guys, they're realistically they're giving their employees more options, really, because they're now for them they're having an option to move to Texas, which maybe wasn't on the table before. And like I said earlier, they might want that option.
Yeah, true.
So I mean, I can't really blame them. It's nice also to see what everyone thinks the next big tech hub is, because the name of the city keeps changing every like 2 or 3 years.
I know we had Research Triangle at one point in North Carolina. We had Atlanta. We had Nashville.
Nashville was a big one. Now Texas.
Austin, Texas.
People say Atlanta was a couple. Yeah, so it's always constantly changing. So a lot of people always say, like, oh, this one's gonna be the big one for the next 3 years. This is the next San Fran coming up, but it always changes. It really just comes down to like which state offers them the best bang for the buck. And as states offer them the best, the other states are gonna take notoriety of it. And they're gonna be like, hey, I kind of want those guys coming over, and they're gonna try to circumvent the others. So I think as long as it spreads out evenly and not one state kind of takes the whole pot, I think it's better for everyone in the long term, because it's just going to make every single city equally kind of grow up together with these tech companies.
Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Dude, I mean, I think he's absolutely right. I feel like these cities, they keep changing, although I do feel like, this Texas has always been in the cards for them just because of how cheap land is, how low the taxes are, and I guess the different incentives they're given for moving there. So, I mean, they've been a big player in the cards, and it's really no surprise that they're kind of getting all the attraction right now.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see.
I think, like Nine said, companies are going to follow the dollar. So, if they can save money by moving somewhere, they're going to do it. It doesn't matter. Really, nothing else matters to them, I don't think so.
Pretty much. I mean, you can't really fault for them. At the end of the day, it's a business. Business is business. So
they got to do what's right by their shareholders, as legally required.
Absolutely, yeah. So you can't really fault them for that.
Completely agree. But let's keep going with news. Let's go on to a bit of video game news, right?
Ooh.
We all talked about Cyberpunk coming out and how exciting that game is going to be to see, and how killer the game should be. News is in. Sony and Xbox are now announcing. Sony and Microsoft, I'm sorry, are announcing refunds for Cyberpunk 2077 because of how shit the game is.
Because it's busted. It doesn't run on any of the old gen consoles I've heard at all. PS4, Xbox One, apparently it just doesn't run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's very interesting, right? It's a very interesting dilemma here because I'm kind of in the realm of like, well, wow, like you guys just spent like 3 years making this game. It's a complete piece of shit, right?
Yep.
Whereas you know it was so hyped up and everything. So I guess the main question here is that like, even when we saw those trailers for the demos and everything, what the hell were they running it on to actually get like this whole thing to run? Right, even on PlayStation 5s and the Xbox Series X, the new generations, right?
Yep.
This was definitely developed on PC, and tested on PC because I run these things on PC. I have it on PC, and even on PC it's not as optimized as it should be. Like I got I would say decent enough system, but I'm still running into issues. And I hear reports of people who have like 370s, 380s, even 390s, right? And they're still running into issues. These are like top of the line specs, newest generation, and they're running into issues. So clearly, like, optimization was a big issue for them, a big obstacle for them to leap over. But clearly, it seems like the PC demographic was their primary audience, their primary scope, and then slowly I think it migrated from there. But the quality kind of diminished as like they got closer and closer to the release date. And they probably wanted to add a lot of stuff too. Because a lot of the things they promise in the game is not in the game, like there was the big one that people keep mentioning is like this police system that they kept praising up to come in the release, how like the police will like kind of be very like a really optimal system where like it will actually interact with you, depending, you can bribe cops and stuff like that. None of those options are in the game. Like the cops just show up literally spawn behind you. They shoot first, ask questions later. So there's no way to find other. You're kind of forced to shoot them. It's and not the system they promised. So it seems like they were kind of rushed, sadly.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, it just seems like they were developing for a console that most people don't have yet. I mean, that's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, which is crazy because like, the next generations have come out, and even then they have some issues. I mean, at least they run there, but they're still not perfect.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And it's a shame that like that type of thing, because these things were primarily originally for the last gen consoles, so you would think they would run the best.
Yep.
Because that's what the primary was, and then the next ones just run even better because they could have just used the porting system that Microsoft and Sony has for like last gen games and just increase the frame rates and stuff like that, and it would have been a no-brainer. But it seems like, I don't know what happened, but it seems like they couldn't get the console variant to run as well as they wanted to, or they were just rushed in that aspect. Hard to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the game was just poorly built, right, from the very get-go. And it's going to be interesting to see, what the repercussions will be. Maybe they'll release a patch that'll fix all these things. Maybe they just don't give a shit and they made enough money and they're calling it a day, right?
So, I mean, I want to hope that CD Projekt Red, they're one of the few, I think, developers I would say that have built some good faith, and they have been kind of one to kind of stick to their word, I'm not saying they're perfect, right? They clearly have made some faults. They clearly deserve some of the hate, a lot of the hate actually, for promising things and not developing a working game for their audience. But if their last game, Witcher 3, has any indication of their current agenda, right? That game came out, I don't know if people remember, that game came out as a kind of a mess when that first launched. And now it's one of the best games of that generation. A lot of the bugs have been fixed. For the next gen consoles, it works beautifully. Like that thing loads up in like less than 2 seconds, like instantly. It loads so fast that the game can't even keep up. That's how great it loads up. So they really did optimize it really well after a while. So I'm hoping the same treatment will go. And it seems like they have big plans for Cyberpunk. This is not kind of a one and dump deal like a lot of other game developers. Like, I'm not gonna name some, but there are a lot of companies that kind of just throw it out there, or maybe do 1 or 2 updates and then kind of get ready for the next title. I don't think that's the case. These are the type of developers that kind of like they take a while with the game. Think of like Rockstar in that kind of gen. Like, they take a while for the games and they kind of pour updates to it. I think that's going to be kind of the case. They talk about a multiplayer that hasn't come out yet, so I think it's in their best interest, and I think they know that to make this game good with updates, slowly patch it out, polish it, and I think that's why they're working so hard with Sony and Microsoft to even refund them, because I think they know that even if they lose a couple of money back with the refunds and stuff like that,
Once it's perfected,
once
here
it's
it comes.
perfected, I think they're gonna come back, especially when that multiplayer comes back. That multiplayer is gonna be basically a second game for them,
Yeah, it will be.
easily. So we'll see. Maybe they could easily, like Two says, like just run away with it. They have the cash, they could probably easily do it. But they have
Yeah.
been working with Sony and Microsoft, so who knows?
Mhm.
But more video game news, right? Apple's long-standing battle with Epic shall continue, and a judge actually just ruled that Tim Cook and Craig Federighi, right, must testify as part of the legal battle with Epic Games moving forward,
Dude, I just want this
Oh, wow.
done. I just want this done.
right?
Like
So,
someone lose or something. Like someone throw in the towel, please.
so
Like
Epic and Apple. I mean, Apple has made strides. I will say, Epic has definitely opened the door and made strides, right?
yeah.
So it's gonna be interesting to see what happens, but a judge just ruled now that for a fact that Apple and Epic, executives, especially Tim and Craig, have to be at each of the hearings now from now on and actually give their speeches.
I think that's an important I think that's an important rule. I think a lot of people don't realize that these guys are not in every single court battle, right? For every single thing their company's involved in.
Yeah, literally for their company, they just don't show up to court.
Yeah, they just don't show up, because to be honest, Apple kind of gets into a lot of legal battles because they're kind of a company that really cares about their quality and their image, right? So they're constantly in battles with people to make sure that that image doesn't get deterred by copycats and stuff like that, and they're constantly always in a battle. I don't know about Epic, but I know Apple's constant in it, so it makes sense that Tim's not going to be in every single battle. He'll literally get nothing done. But the fact that they have to both Craig and Tim have to be in this,
Yep.
that's some big news. Because these guys are like, they don't just show up to anything. And it'll be interesting to see. I really hope this thing gets done. I want to play Fortnite on my iPad again. So it's just
I want to be So as someone who only has a iPhone, right, and just a shitty laptop that can't even play games, I kind of just want to play Fortnite with 9 on my iPhone. So when that happens, please let me know. I should be the first one in line.
Say what you want about Fortnite, right? Even if you don't like the game, the game was, I think, one of the first to really offer true cross-play across every.
Oh, absolutely! Literally every platform, everything, indiscriminately every platform.
Exactly, and I think it set the trend for a lot of companies to follow suit, because now pretty much every battle royale game is almost like a standard, has to have crossplay for it to be even considered competition now. And Fortnite was one of the first to really set that trend. So, I really like that. And because of this battle, it's one of the few actually that's not in there anymore. So I really hope that gets mitigated. The whole reason I got into Fortnite is simply because I started playing on my iPad. If that option wasn't there for me, I wouldn't be playing Fortnite to this day. I guarantee that. So, I hope it literally gets fixed. That's all I hope. I hope it doesn't take 10 years. That's what I just hope.
Well, continuing with some Apple news, right? Apple has now shut down over a dozen, but now close to, I think, 100 Apple California stores across the whole state, mostly to comply with Gavin Newsom's, governor of California's, COVID guidelines.
Is this like permanently closed or like temporary closed?
So they're temporary closed, but I don't know. It really depends on when the governor of California actually decides to lift these, I guess, closures, right?
Fair enough. I mean, that's not really up to them. That's not really Apple closing them. It's like Apple just following state laws.
Yeah, so they're complying with state laws and closing this, but it brings up these interesting dilemmas, right? Of all those Apple employees are kind of just out of work now and stuff like that, and it's kind of brutal what's going on.
Is Apple paying them at all?
I don't know. I don't know, to be honest with you.
I imagine they're probably not required to, but Apple's a big enough company where I would kind of expect that they might. Yeah.
They can, but again, they're not required to, so it's hard to say.
It's hard to say. I don't know. So I can't say yes or no on that question, right? I'll need a little bit more research into that, but it's gonna be interesting to see how this really plays out. So Apple's just one of those retailers. Of course, there's so many other retailers that are closing across California, but this shows you that COVID is still alive and well, right?
I really think with the way things are playing out, I really think Apple's gonna start looking into kind of manless stores as an option moving forward, like Amazon has for their grocery sections. Amazon Foods. It's just all cameras and like it gets charged to your what's it called your Amazon account, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised right now if there's something in Apple's pipelines where it kind of like build up some like manless stores where everything you kind of get to pick out whatever you want, like get to test out demo sites and stuff like that.
Yep.
And you get to kind of ticket an item. So you want a MacBook, right? Ticket it. You take out your iPhone, Apple Pay, and it's gonna be coming to you in like a week in your what's it called, home, shipped to you. But now you have a chance to really like look at it. You can also test out cases and stuff like that if you want to. There's the cameras and stuff like that. It's gonna be really hard because these are like kind of high end products, right? So you can't really just have them in the open, like kind of groceries,
Yeah, but if you have one security guard in the store, there you go. Problem
solved.
I
mean, problem solved. I think, and of course, it wouldn't replace the traditional Amazon retail stores because you kind of need them. They're kind of you got to remember Apple's retail stores are kind of more of an experience, not really like a store, right? That's a real big thing that they really want to push. But it's more about an experience you get through, the type of people you meet.
Well, I mean, here, just picture this, ready? Picture this. Apple sets up a handful of video kiosks. They hire people to work remotely. And then people can walk into the stores and just interact with the video kiosks and wait online. Like, that's...
Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if Apple's only trying to, work out the bugs of like a manless store. Because we don't know how long this is going to be, right? And... like I said,
not much longer, but yeah.
Not hopefully not much longer, but in case that something happens, there's already news. I don't know if you guys heard of like new strains coming out of the virus, sadly, and we don't know if that can affect with current vaccines and stuff like that.
I've read it won't. I read it will not.
I read it wrong though, but you never know, right? That's the thing.
Yep.
And Apple's always the type of person to be the first to send trends in terms of things. And of course, it would just offer a different experience. Maybe you're a type of person who doesn't want to interact with like people. There's a lot of people out there, surprisingly, that just don't want. They got into a store, they kind of know what they want. They kind of want to just try it out a couple cases or try out what the new MacBook kind of feels like, and then they're pretty much set. They don't need to talk to anyone, right? And that will be a perfect kind of a store experience for them. So I definitely think there's an audience for it.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how it goes down. But sticking with the COVID news, right? So although this is more bleak, right? Some more positive news regarding COVID. The first vaccine shots have been launched in New York State, right, as well as a bunch of other states across the United States, as well as in the United Kingdom, for those of you who are listening from the United Kingdom, right? So, we're trending in the right direction. The doses are coming out. I know the FDA actually just approved the next type of vaccine. I think the Moderna vaccine, right?
It's the same class as the Pfizer one, just different company.
Exactly. So that's been approved now as well. So we should start to see a bunch more, of these doses and everything going out. I actually know one or two nurse friends of mine who actually did get the vaccine.
Yep, same.
Right?
I have some family in the hospitals that have gotten it.
And so it's interesting to see how it all really will go. But we're trending in the right direction. So far, I think there's only been one negative case in Seattle where, like, the vaccine had some, like, issues. But for the most part, everyone else has been perfectly fine, right? So it's interesting on how this is going and exciting to see maybe we finally get out of this pandemic and get back to our normal lives as much as we can,
I mean, I know we don't usually talk about this type of stuff, but I mean, in terms like this really does kind of fit our topic of medical technology, right? Like the vaccine, at the end of the day, it really is medical technology. Like that's what I would really classify it as. It's man-made, right? It's tech. That's I think it's a perfect term for it, but. I mean, it really is, like, I don't know if you guys have read it all on actually how they work. I know we've discussed it a little bit, but more so our viewers, but it's pretty incredible how these vaccines work and the viability they might have in potentially treating other illnesses now outside of COVID as well. Like, these mRNA-type vaccines are incredibly impressive and have a lot of potential to solve, like, massive medical problems across the board. They might become the new standard for vaccines, and you might even see some other treatments for pathogens, maybe cancer treatments, who knows? Really, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, sky is the limit, right? And, we're running close on time, but I have 3 more stories, all under the one big umbrella of a big news story, right? So let's kick those off, and then we shall call it a day. But these 3 stories are the big one coming up, right? Facebook is now facing an antitrust lawsuit with the United States government on Instagram and the owning of Instagram and the owning of WhatsApp. So, Facebook actually did see this coming, right? As we heard in, which one was this? I think this was F8 2018,
18.
right? Yeah. Back in F8 2018, I remember Mark coming up on stage and saying how he's incorporating everything: Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, Instagram, and the Facebook core application, as well as Oculus, right, into one big ecosystem, so that all you need is one account across all 4 ecosystems, right? And as you know, as we were not big fans of it, right? Because we're like, that's a shitty move, right? Because Facebook's trying to be more like Google in that regard, right? But these are not like services that I think require the usage of Facebook accounts.
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting is that from a business perspective, obviously, I respect this decision, and it's an ingenious decision because, Mark actually saw it coming that, hey, they're going to ask me to come and break up my companies. I'm not going to break them up. If I combine them all under one umbrella with one usage account, they can't really break me up.
Yep.
And believe it or not, 2 years later, the bet Mark placed on actually having that all done has come true. And now he's in a legal battle with the United States government, basically stating that, hey, I can't break up my companies now because now they're all ingrained under one ecosystem, right?
And you saw it, guys, recently, if you recall, now you can access all of your messenger apps all through the Instagram Messenger.
Yep, that's exactly what I was just going to say. So for those of you who are on Instagram, right, you can access all your Messenger and Facebook messages from there. If you're on Messenger, you can access your Instagram and stuff from there, right? Yeah, and so it's going to be interesting to see what happens in this case, right? So I know, as I just said, right, like from Facebook, you can access all your Instagram messages. From Messenger, you can access all your Instagram messages, and from Instagram, you can access all your Messenger messages.
Yep.
Now, the one place where I think the U.S. government could actually take this is, right, separating out WhatsApp. I don't think Mark and his team at WhatsApp has had enough time to actually ingrain everything together, just because WhatsApp is a much more complicated build than Instagram is, right, from behind the scenes. And so it could be that we see WhatsApp actually spin off into its own company, right? How this would really work, I don't know, right? Because now that the mergers and everything happened, and it's been years since all these happened, right? I don't know where it would really go, but it's gonna be interesting to see how it really just plays out, right? Because you can't just tell Facebook to be like, hey, just kill WhatsApp as a product, right? Because like you have like 2 billion people in the world actually rely on that service that's their only form of communication. So I don't know. It's gonna be a hard battle. And I don't know if there's going to be any winners or losers out of this thing. I think it's definitely going to change tech cases as we know them, right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Now, under that same umbrella, right, you may be thinking, all right, they're targeting Facebook. Like, Facebook has all these things. What about other tech companies? What about, Amazon or Google or something like that, right?
Yep.
Well, Google's joining them now. So the U.S. government has also filed the same antitrust case against Google for all of their products as well. And it's figuring out what's the next move for Google to do with all those little companies. Now, with Google, it's a little easier, right? Because Google has like set diverse companies for each of those little things, right? And it's all under just one ownership change.
Mm-hmm.
So the equity changes are probably going to be a lot simpler for that one than with Facebook, right? But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out for Google as well, because now you're just going to be all over the place figuring out like, okay, now it's not all under the same company. A lot of cohesive ecosystem things will actually be broken, right? So I don't know what we'll see there, but what are your guys' thoughts on those two cases right there?
I mean, like we said, it's no surprise. Like we heard about this back like 2 years ago when they were considering merging their applications. Like it was pretty obvious why they were going to do that. They don't want to get broken up.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like this is no surprise to us. We saw this coming ages ago. I'm pretty sure everyone saw this coming ages ago. So
yeah.
Obviously, they're going to take every step they can to avoid it. And at the end of the day, are they going to be able to avoid it? Really? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. I'm really unsure at this point.
I don't know. Nine, what are your thoughts?
I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this can go, because honestly, it may come down to the government just asking them to split it up, even though they're so integrated. And they'll be like, they can simply just be like, well, that's your fault for merging them together. And I wouldn't put it behind the government to order it like that, to just be like, you got to split them up. I don't care if they're they're inseparable. Find a split point, split them up.
Yeah.
It's definitely a thing. I think Mark is I think Mark has set the stones. He saw it coming, and he wanted to prevent it. But sometimes if the government wants something and they want it badly, they're gonna push for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Mark's not completely out of the woods yet in terms of that.
Nope, not at all.
So unless Mark somehow comes with a compromise with them, or they settle this because the government's pretty much out to get him. Like they want this to split up in some form or other. I don't know if it's gonna be just WhatsApp, or I don't know if it's gonna be WhatsApp and Instagram. It's gonna be something. So as long as Mark figures out some compromise, maybe he compromised by giving away WhatsApp away, right? And he keeps Instagram and Facebook integrated. I don't know. There's gonna be something going on, and the faster he figures out that compromise, the faster it's gonna blow over. But the more I think he tries to push it, the more the government's going to want them to split up, even if it's.
And the question is, how he does it though is still to be determined, right? Like, how are you going to sell WhatsApp, right?
Of course, I mean, like that. You can go so many different ways. I mean, we talked about WhatsApp alone is a complicated system. Now you're talking about 3 complicated apps that have so much. They're not only just all have their own complicated architectures and users and stuff like that, but they'll have different cases. They have their different audience. Like I tend WhatsApp audience to be more international kind of audience.
Yep.
Right. Instagram's more of like a young audience, more like USA, UK based and stuff like that. And you got Facebook, who's kind of like the older crowd, right? With grandparents and parents in general. So it really is like each of them kind of hit a different audience, even though they kind of all do similar things if you think about it. But they all hit different audience for those reasons alone. So it's gonna be really difficult. Either way, Facebook may lose a piece of their pie, and unless they figure out a compromise, it's gonna keep hitting them hard.
Here's a big question I have, right? Think about WhatsApp, right? I mean, we just discussed and said how it's mostly an international crowd on that application, right? Now, what if Facebook was to just say, okay, well, we're actually just going to dissolve WhatsApp US and keep it as international, right? If they determine that like 85% of their company from WhatsApp is business done internationally, it might actually just be better off for them to dissolve their US-based company for WhatsApp than it is to split it.
It might be. I mean, it really comes down to not even the fact if they can do it, but more of the fact if the government deems that as an acceptable solution. If the government says, you know what, that's broken enough, and you have less control over it or whatever, and it works for everyone involved, for the USA base, for us, then yeah, go for it. And you know what, that would actually work out for Mark really well. The problem is if the government thinks that's not enough. And that's really where it's going to fall for him. But if he can convince them to do that, I think that would really work out for everyone involved.
Yeah. And now the final story I have for today.
Except for the U.S. employees. Kind of sucks for them.
I mean, yeah. I mean, there's gonna be.
They'll move somewhere else inside the Facebook.
There's gonna be a loser in this battle, right? I think the thing is that Mark doesn't want to be that loser, or he wants.
You got to realize, right? That's their leverage over the U.S. government, right? That's the only leverage they have. It's like, okay, well, you're gonna force us to sell the company. Well, we're not selling it. We're just gonna dissolve, fire all our employees, and you're gonna have 3,000 U.S. employees unemployed. So you can pick. What would you prefer? We keep it, or you lose those jobs internally?
Hard to say. The government has never been one to break an industry like that before, so they can do it again.
Because I know, like in other cases, their government typically doesn't want jobs to leave. They don't want people to become unemployed.
Typically, yes, of course. I mean, you don't want that.
They'll do almost anything to keep those jobs here, and it's just tough. It really is a tough situation if it comes down to something like that.
It's going to be the lesser of the two evils in this case, this type of thing. So we'll see how it goes.
Yep. And now the final Techcast story for Techcast episode 20 is this, right? So sticking under the umbrella of, legal issues, the Federal Trade Commission of the United States has ordered Amazon, Facebook, as well as other companies such as TikTok, Discord, and WhatsApp, Reddit, Snap, Twitter, and YouTube to provide how they're collecting user data, what they're actually collecting, and how they're maintaining and storing that data, right? What the reason behind this is, I don't know, right? I'm a natural skeptic when it comes to anything that's government related and technology. Do I think they're actually caring about the well-being of, how these companies are storing data in case of a data issue in the future? Possibly, most likely not. Do I think they're asking because they want to know what company that they can actually probe to get data from once once some federal investigation needs to happen? Most likely. Do I think they're trying to install backdoors into these companies to figure out like how the NSA did and listen in on all the data that they collect? Most likely, right? So it's interesting to see how this is going to play out, but right now, I don't know if anyone's actually complied with this. It's actually a fresh thing that just came to these companies, I think, a few days ago, right?
Yeah.
And so I think they have like 30 days to comply, or then they face more repercussions. But this is kind of what I wanted to end Techcast with. So just to get your guys' mind, running with this. But 4 and 9, what are your guys' thoughts on this one?
I'm all for it.
Really?
Yeah, 100%. I think, if you notice, one of the guys on that list is Apple.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is because Apple, even back, Steve Jobs himself has said it multiple times, that the user should know what they're using their data for. He's been a big proponent of that. He always said that they want to notify their users how they're using their data and in what way, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much the consensus of this order, right? How you're using this data and how you're collecting it, right? Apple's on this list because they kept to that promise that Steve Jobs made way back, and they continue to it, right? And I think that's pretty much the way. I don't think that's too much to ask. Like, exactly how we're using our data, to what extent, right? And these big players are always like the ones that I think, in my opinion, are the ones that kind of always fall into trouble with data and like security. You got TikTok, you got Facebook, you got Reddit, you got Twitter, YouTube. These guys are constantly in the news about breaches or misusing data or personal information. I don't think it's too much to ask them to comply with exactly how you're collecting this data and how you're using it. So I really think that them pushing it, for them to start making some clear distinctions and voices about how they're using our data, I think it's a right move.
Interesting. Maybe that could be it. All right, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt on that one. That could actually be the case, right?
Yeah.
Or it could also be the case that the government has already known from experience Apple won't cooperate with any of the users' data and providing any of that data, right? Mm-hmm. So it could be that, maybe they're looking for a new company that they could actually go to to steal people's data from. But I don't know. Or what are your thoughts?
I don't know.
I mean, I don't trust the government with anything. Like, I want them out of my data. I want them out of everything. And I also don't trust big companies and big tech with my data. Like, I just don't want anyone to have my data. And there's really no winning here. Everyone loses because big companies are going to get your data and they're going to use it. And then the government, if they can get their hands on your data, that's also bad. Like, there's no winning in this situation. I just don't see any winning by anybody. I don't like it at all. The entire situation altogether. But that, all things considered, right? I think regulations on what companies can do with our data should be welcome. They shouldn't just be sending my stuff everywhere, selling it everywhere, and doing what they want with it. And there's really no other way to do that other than to at least have some government oversight on that data inside of these companies. I mean, like I said, I don't think there's any winning in this situation. All answers are probably not perfect, but I'm not really certain what the best solution is.
Let me clarify something, right? Because it may be something I missaid, right? But if the government's asking them to share the information, I'm hoping that also means the government sharing that information they collected to the public, right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Otherwise, if they don't make that distinction move and they're keeping the information that they're collected, then that pretty much helps no one. And then it falls into what Forrest says, a bad case for everyone, right? Because there's one thing for the government to collect this information and make the logistic move to approach these companies, as the government should sometimes step in, make the move. Hey, how are you collecting this data? How are you using personal citizens' data, and in what way? And then share that information into like a big, a press release. This is how they're using their data, stuff like that, and basically educate the public, right? Because I think the public should know how. I think the public, in their rights, should know how their data is being used. I think that's fair, right?
Very, yeah.
But if the government decides to collect this and just hides it and doesn't spread it to the public and just wanted to collect more information on how these companies are using their data, right? Maybe for leverage or just to gain more knowledge or right that, then yes, I think it's a totally bad move, and I wouldn't be supportive. That one move would definitely change my mind.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But anyway, guys, with that being said, we are out of time for
Yes, we are.
Techcast for today.
Yep.
Just want to thank you guys for listening in. Right, I hope you guys enjoyed Techcast number 20. Sorry again, we apologize for the delay where it comes to these episodes. It's been a little tricky with some of the personal situations we've been dealing with. But we wish all of you and all of our listeners around the world, very happy holidays. We hope you guys get to spend some quality time with family or some quality alone time and actually get to enjoy yourself, to rest and recharge. And we can't wait for you guys to hear some more TechCast stories from us, and we can't wait to see what we have planned for you guys in 2021.
Yep.
But with that being said, guys, I'm 2.
I'm 9.
I'm 4, and we will see you in the new year.
No worries. Bye, all.
Later.
Take care, everyone.